Okay, so this glue block is about 4 inches or so in diameter. And then I took a parting tool and cut concentric grooves in it. Makes it even more secure with hot melt glue. Hot melt glue works really well, I'm telling you, if you do it right. Hot melt, a glue gun. Okay. Now, mine are a little different because if you can see this on the inside, there's a hole that will thread onto a 1-inch spindle like this. Okay, now I don't throw it onto this. I have a rotator set up. It's a variable speed, low speed motor that it turns anywhere from 0 to 70 RPMs. So on some of those pieces over there, there is a epoxy resin finish on them. And when I put the resin finish on them, the stuff takes like 8 to 12 hours to dry. I mean, to dry to the touch, not to cure. So what I do is I'll put it on that rotating device and I'll let it rotate for like 6 hours. It evens out the finish and it keeps it from puddling and dripping off. Because if you just let it sit like this, it's going to run down here and drip off because it is quite thin. So that's why there's that hole in the bottom. Okay, so my idea was to make these pretty big so I can use them more than once. So this is something that you're not going to use unless you have a way to rotate it. And the thing that I have to rotate it on is a 1-inch thread, just like this lathe is, and you can thread this on, and you can set it to rotate slow. So what I usually do is I'll use a barbecue brush, for putting barbecue sauce on. They're real flexible and they're real smooth, and that's what I put the finish on with the resin, and I'll run it at a pretty high speed to get it spread evenly. Then I'll turn it down to about 20 RPMs, and I put a box over it so nothing falls on it, and I'll let it spin for 6 or 8 hours. I come back and check it periodically because if there's any place that I didn't cover, I've got a couple hours that I can mess with it and get that barbecue brush back out and move it around a little bit. And also I'll hit it with a torch. So if there's any air bubbles in it, I can get rid of the air bubbles and then just let it rotate it about, 10 to 20 RPMs for 12 hours. And then when you're done, if you did it right and you're lucky and, the sun comes up tomorrow, it'll look something like this. This was not my first attempt to do this. And I don't think I quite have it perfected yet, but it's not bad now. So, and I'll tell you, I had to do this demo. I had to hustle a little bit because every piece of this that I had turned last year, I sold every one of them at craft shows. They were like the first ones to go, and I didn't give them away. Okay, the cheapest one was $75 and one was $250. So people really like the stuff that's really shiny like that. Got that hard finish on it. And the finish is really durable too. Epoxy resin is a pretty hard finish. Okay, so 2 things you got to do. You got to turn the outside, you got to turn the inside. You start out, doesn't look too bad. But then as you turn it, it's going to start to look like this. You lose all the shine and it just doesn't look good. So we got to get from that then to that. All right, what kind of tool do you think we need to use to turn resin? Carbide. You know what? Carbide works. Everything that I turned last year, I turned it with bowl gouges and scrapers. Okay, I didn't own a carbide tool to turn this with, but I got convinced watching YouTube and stuff that you had to have a negative rake carbide tool to turn resin. And I'll say this, you don't have to. It's probably a little easier. I don't know that it works any better. So I will somewhere along the way tonight I will show you using both kinds of tools. This is an easy wood tool, and it's got a negative rake carbide cutter. What I found out after I bought this thing is you can put these negative rake carbide cutters in almost any carbide tool that's out there. You know, these easy wood tools, they don't give them away, but you know. So we get this thing going, and the one thing I do because of this hot melt glue is I keep a tailstock on there for as long as I can. And I drilled that out to begin with. And then I made these. I should have shown you that before I put it on there. I made a few of these things. And it's just a plug, 1-inch thread. So it goes on here. So we got the ball bearing in here. So it keeps it going through and you don't have much stress on that glue. I've never had one come off the glue. I won't say it never will, but I've never had one come off. I put a pretty healthy amount of glue on there with those ridges cut in there. And then I go back and I glue around the edge. And then I let it set for a day. Sometimes I think this isn't a whole lot different than trying to turn glass. It sounds like it's glass. It can cut you like glass. So it's the only thing that I ever turn that I use gloves for. And especially till you get it roughed in. Once you get it round, you don't need them. But when it's when you're first getting it round, it can throw some hot, sharp pieces at you. And the more speed you can get up, the better. Gentle cuts, and you can hear it. And I'll stop it here in a second. And you can see what that cut looks like. Yeah, like shattered glass. Right? We got to get past that. We got to get it round. And the more speed you can get going, and the slower the tool moves, the better your cut will get. Okay, see, it's getting better. It's not great. It's not getting great, but it's not round yet either. And because of time constraints, I'm going to switch pieces of wood here in a bit. And I'm not going to be able to do a finished product, but I can give you enough to get an idea. There, hear it now? Pretty round now. It's not making that kind of shattering glass noise. And there, it's off, not round there. And we're back to shattering glass. And you can see out here on the end, it's starting to get smooth. It's not there yet. Pretty round out here on the end now. Okay, now, if you don't have a carbide tool with that kind of cutter on it, you can use a bowl gouge. And you're going to use it pretty much the same way you would on a piece of wood, except you're going to go a lot slower. And you get pretty much the same kind of tear out and chip out until you get things smoothed out and get it round. The more speed you can get up, the better. The tool speed is more important than the lathe speed. The slower you can move your tool at kind of a nice steady pace, and if you can see it now, see I'm starting to get something that looks like wood shavings. 720 right now. And one of the interesting things about this stuff is, it's a lot of static electricity. It likes to stick to you, especially on a surface like these gloves. But you can see it's getting there. And actually, this is better than the carbide tool. Yeah, it's a lot better. Carbide tool is faster, and once you get it round and you get all this chip out gone, the carbide tool will get you a smoother finish in the long run. What was that? You know what? I've never really gotten a. I shouldn't say it. I won't say it. Well, he tried testing raw carbide with carbide flake. No, I haven't. I'm sure you could do it if you if you have the ability to cut it and sharpen it. I'm sure you could do that. Um, the advantage of carbide is it will get you ultimately a smoother finish, and it'll get you there faster, and you don't have to sharpen it. With these tools, you have to sharpen fairly frequently. Although sometimes being super sharp on resin isn't as critical as it is on wood. And I think that's partly because once you get the thing round, so you can get up some speed, and I'm gonna finish getting this round so I can get the speed up. And I would typically turn these things once they're round at least 1200 RPMs, if not 15 or 1800. And I think I might have just about dulled this tool down as much as I can. Yeah, it's square, but it's radiused. So it's not flat across the top, it's kind of arced. And you can use scrapers on this stuff. Okay, this is a bowl scraper, so it may not be the best thing to do, but you can use a scraper on it. And you can see where it's more or less round, it works pretty well. I'm sorry, I heard something back there. No, you probably can, but I don't know how to do it. You'd have to have a diamond cutter or something to. Yeah, I've done that before too. Yeah, on yeah, the ones that are round and they're not. You can just turn it upside down, kind of, and put it on a diamond card, and just slide back and forth and sharpen them. It'll never, I don't think it'll ever be quite the way it was when it was new, but you can get it sharp or sharper. Okay, so we're getting pretty round now, so I'm going to get the speed up on this thing. You're in the danger zone. I don't think you have anything to worry about. We're between centers, so I don't think so. Okay, so now you can see this part hasn't been turned before, but I've got the speed up to about 1200, and it's working a lot better. It is definitely slower than turning wood, and the tool speed is the whole thing, not the lathe speed. And you get a lot of this, but you know what? It's different, but you don't have all the dust in the air that you do with wood. Most of it's either stuck to you or it's on the floor. Okay, so it's not quite completely round. The other thing is this stuff gets hot too. That's another reason for the glove. Not only is it sharp, but it's hot. And this the top edge of this thing up here will definitely cut you if you touch it. Okay, I think we're going to have to surrender with this tool because it is dull now. So go back to the carbide and see if it's going to work a little better now. Got more speed, and you can already tell if you look at where I've turned here. And you can see your tool marks real plain with this stuff. I don't know if you could see it or not on the camera, but I had a white streak kind of running right around about here. And that was a tool mark. And it went away really quick with this. Okay, and I know I'm not smooth there because you can hear it chattering. You got a good smooth finish on there. You'll be able to hear the difference in the sound. Pardon me? I use designer epoxy, and this is a deep pore resin. So it's got about 3 days in a pressure pot, and then 5 days to full cure. But because it's a deep pore, it's less likely to crack, and you're less likely to have air bubbles in it. It's got more time for the air to come out. Depends. If I'm doing something like the button bowl, where there's a lot of places for air in there, yeah, I put in a vacuum chamber first. And, it might have to be in a vacuum chamber for a half an hour or so to suck out most of the air and then put it in the pressure pot. But you've got time to work with it. That's the good thing with the deep pore epoxy. It's pretty liquid for quite a while. So you can work with it quite a bit as far as changing it and doing different things with it. So now, if you watch here in just a second, you can see I've got white lines running around this thing, and now they're disappearing. So that tells me I got a pretty good finish on there. It's far from perfect, but it's not that far. So I'm gonna put a little bit of finish on this thing, just to give you an idea on what happens when you put finish on it. As if I had a tool to pop this lid open. Okay, so this is just wipe on poly, and this applies to Kevin's bowl over there. Is it? You know, you do all the work on these things, and they look kind of ugly, but you put a little bit of finish on them, and all of a sudden, it's pretty amazing. It cleans out the white stuff that's in there. I should have wiped this down actually first with some mineral spirits to clean it, but it just gives you a quick peek at what the thing really going to look like. Well, that's true, but this has not been sanded. Remember, this is right off the tool. Okay, so if it had been sanded, that would have been what it looked like. Not usually. I have. It's not necessarily necessary to use the micro mesh pads and sand it up to 12,000 grit or anything like that. I would probably say sand it to maybe 600 and then apply the finish, and you'll get a finish like this. I put a wooden plug basically in there because epoxy is anywhere from $65 to $120 a gallon. Okay, so if you can save a cup of epoxy here and there, that's a that's a pretty significant savings, because you're depending on what epoxy you use. Now, this designer epoxy, deep pour epoxy, I found this on YouTube. There's a guy up in Canada, Sprague Wood Turning, that does tons of epoxy work, and he has for years. And this is it's a Canadian company that makes this stuff, designer epoxy, and it's $65 a gallon. So it's actually one of the cheaper ones. But yeah, $65 a gallon. Well, it depends on how much you order. I usually order it 3 gallons at a time, and yeah, that's what it is. No, $65 a gallon. You ordered what? Oh, yeah. It can be, but they also put it on sale. And if you go to Sprague Wood Turning's YouTube site, he's got discounts on there all the time for 20% off and different things. So you can get a better deal on it. Now, what I'm going to do now. Any more questions about this? Okay. So I'm going to change directions a little bit. I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to switch to this one. And I do mark my my jaws, so I line up number one jaw with a mark that I put on here. Got a little line on here. I line that up with the number one jaw, and in theory, it's going to run nice and true. Not bad. I'll take that. Okay, now, just for a little bit of a comparison, I'm going to put this wipe-on poly on this piece too. And this piece has been sanded to 600. Yeah. What kind of wood is that in there? It's a cactus. It's a Keith, you had the name of it, and I lost it. Cholla. It's a cholla wood from a cactus plant, and that's basically it's a cactus that has a bunch of branches on it, and they're small. They're anywhere from that big to maybe that big around. And when they die and the live part of the plant dries up, that's what you get. Okay, so now you can kind of see here, and that's one coat of polyurethane, which isn't nearly enough, obviously, but it's a pretty nice finish, just like that. So I don't think you'd be too unhappy with this by just putting a couple coats of wipe on poly on it and calling it a day. But you could use a like a white Scotch-Brite pad just to scuff it a little bit. Okay, so this one has the wood plug in it, and I've got to turn away the wood plug. And I'm going to use another carbide tool. This one's got a little smaller cutter on it. It's the same type of cutter, but it's a little smaller. And the only thing you got to worry about with these glue chucks is you don't want to be in a big hurry. You don't want to get a catch, and you don't want to try and take everything off in one pass. So if you take light passes, I got to read there. Sorry, telling you that was something wrong. But again, you can do it with a carbide or a high-speed steel bowl gouge. And you scrape it with the bowl gouge too. Now, right now, this piece is quite thick, and either one will work. I think the carbide works a little better, but either one works. And again, you can tell it's not trued up across the top, and it tells you when it's mad. And it's usually mad because you're being greedy. You're trying to take too much off in a single pass, or it's not true yet. And you can turn these things and use them in a shear cutting mode instead of just going straight in. So if you tip it at an angle, again, you turn it and use it more as a scraper or as a skew, you're going to get a better cut. Okay. And then somewhere along the way, you've got to decide what my wall thickness is going to be. And not this. This is way, way thick. So we're going to just start thinning that out. And that's the other nice thing about carbide cutters. You can cut 3 different ways, you know. It's cut on the side or either side or the front. I like to establish my thickness of the wall and then work my way in. And we've got all that core for stability. Okay. And now, and once you're doing the inside, you know, the face shield's not as important. That's for sure. And again, you just got to remember, don't get greedy. Take your time. Okay, and I will guarantee you that on most of these pieces, if you touch that edge while it's rotating, it's going to leave a mark on your hand. Okay. Yeah. Mine's just about healed now, but it's a voice of experience. And so what I usually try to do is I won't go very long before I'll round that over and just knock the corner off, because you can have that just like a knife's edge sharp. You know, now it's not there right now because this top's not flat. On this one, I actually took some pieces of this cactus and laid them this way on the bottom. So I'll go down to that, and then it'll have the same look, I hope, on the bottom that it does on the side. And this becomes a lot different when you turn this away and you get light coming through the other side. Like right now, you can't really see this cactus that's in here, but when you get it thin and you've got light coming through from both sides, all of a sudden you'll be able to see it. It just it takes a while. You're not going to turn one of these things in a half hour. At least I've never been able to. Yeah. And I just like to kind of take it down in steps and then work my way up to the top, the top rim. And a steady rest is a good idea too, if you have a steady rest. I think you get it too thin, and the likelihood of it cracking along the edges of the woods gets a lot more likely. So I've been impressed with doing the hot melt glue stuff. I've never had one come off yet. It really it holds a lot better than I thought it would. What you can do is you can part it off right along here, or you can, I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing here. Yeah, you can part it off like right along here. Okay. If you can see that. You can do that. And then you got to get the glue off the bottom though, right? Alcohol. Alcohol will soften the glue. You put it on all around the edges, and then you can slowly work it off. You get the 91% isotopal alcohol, and you got to saturate it pretty good, and it doesn't affect the epoxy resin though, but it will definitely soften that glue. You can use a heat gun to soften it too, but the alcohol works. So once you get this wood gone or mostly gone, then you can use the alcohol to get the rest of the glue off. If you try and sand the glue off, you're going to go through a lot of sandpaper because it's going to clog it up so fast, because like you're sanding soft rubber basically, and it's just going to clog up. And forget about that abrasive cleaner stick you've got. It ain't going to do anything. You're just going to go through a lot of sandpaper or sanding discs. So you can also, once you part it off, if you have a vacuum chuck system, you can turn this around the other way and then cut it off the bottom too with a bowl gouge or a scraper. Once you get the glue off, yeah, you've got to sand it. And at that point, I might, if I put on the vacuum chuck, I can use a bowl gouge to clean it up, and then I can sand it on the lathe. But if you use alcohol to get it off, you can just hold this thing in your hand with the sanding disc on a drill and sand the bottom of it that way. Air is not your friend with epoxy, because you'll get air bubbles that will be visible in the epoxy, but it also sucks the epoxy into the wood. And in the process of sucking the epoxy in, the air comes out. so you've got a hard piece of wood then. If you have a kind of punky piece of wood, you're going to make it hard, so it'll cut better, and you'll suck the air out, so you won't see air bubbles in the finish. From a turner's perspective, I think there's a bump there. Why is there a bump there? From the John Q. Public's perspective, man, that's beautiful. It's shiny. So you got two perspectives you need to look at your work at. One is yours, and you want perfection. Well, good luck with that. It's hard to come by, and we all work for it, and we try to get it. But thank you.